Hey guys, what's up? My name is Gabby. Welcome back to my channel. And today I'm going to be filming my 2017 end of the year reading survey year in review thing. Enjoyed making this video last year. I think it is a really great way to wrap up the entire year. So the first question is, how many books did you read and did you meet your goal? And to answer this, yes, I did manage to read 112 books this year, and my goal was 100 books, and I finally did it. I remember last year I was really pissed because I only read 99 books, and finally I did it. I broke the 100 book threshold. Next question is most read genre, and I think once again my most read genre is contemporary. Next question is the longest and shortest books you read this year. The longest book I read this year was It by Stephen King, and it was 1,153 pages, and it was officially the longest book I've ever read. The shortest book I read this year was Every Beginning I've Ever Written is Kind of Sad at 109 pages. And this is like a short series of poems and short stories. Next question is favorite book published in 2017. My favorite book of the year was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book came out in June, and it's still my favorite book that came out this year. I loved it. Next question is favorite debut book in 2017. I think this is going to be The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. Can't believe that this is a debut novel. It's such a good debut novel. Amazing. I think it's a must read for everyone, and the fact that it's a debut novel just makes it even more impressive. Next question is favorite book that was not published this year. My favorite book that wasn't published this year was Junkie by Cambria Hebert. This was published at the beginning of 2016, I believe, so it's not like it's that old. This was one of the only ones in my top 5 of my year this year that wasn't published in 2017. So. Next question is a book that lived up to the hype, and for this I'm gonna go with Egomaniac by V. Keeland because this book has a 4.3 on Goodreads, which I do feel is pretty high, and this book definitely lived up to the hype for me. Next question is a book that did not live up to the hype, and for that I'm gonna go with Wish You Were Here by Renee Carlino because this book has a 4.12 out of 5 on Goodreads, and I gave it 1 star. It was so disappointing. The main character, Charlotte, is one of my least favorite characters ever, so did not live up to that hype. Next question is book that felt like the biggest accomplishment. I am gonna go with It by Stephen King because, come on dude, it's like 1,153 pages. It's literally the longest book I've ever read, so of course by the time I actually finished this, it felt like the biggest accomplishment. I read this in 5 days, and it was like 5 really long days of it felt like I read 5 books in those 5 days, you know, because I sat there and read almost 200 pages every single day. Next question is favorite character that you read about this year, and I'm gonna have to go with Evelyn Hugo from The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo because this book is really the story of her life, you know, because it does start when she's a young upcoming actress in Hollywood, and then you get the entire arc of her life until she's an older woman, in her 80s or 90s or something. She was definitely the most intriguing character I read about this year because I got to experience her entire life. Next question is least favorite character you read about this year. I'm sure it's no surprise to hear that it's Charlotte from Wish You Were Here by Renee Carlino because, as I just mentioned, she's one of my least favorite characters I've ever read about, and I couldn't really stand her in this book. Next question is most shocking book / moment. The most shocking moment of my reading this year was the plot twist at the end of Behind Her Eyes by Sarah Pinborough. I don't know why a lot of people don't really like the plot twist at the end of this book. I think it's one of the most clever, unique, and intense plot twists I've ever read in a book, and the ending of this was definitely the most shocking moment of my entire reading year. It was freaking fantastic. Next one is favorite couple or OTP. For that, I'm gonna go with Drew and Trent from Junkie because I loved their relationship in this book. They start off as best friends, and then they slowly start to discover feelings for each other, and they're just the absolute cutest. They're so cute. Next question is the best written book you read this year. For that, I'm gonna go with The Butterfly Project by Emma Scott because I do feel this book is written so gorgeously. Emma Scott's writing is just so good and so beautiful, and she has a really gorgeous way of storytelling. Next question is book that you push the most people to read. To be honest, I'm pretty sure it's still We Are the Ants because this is my favorite book of all time. Pretty sure this is the book that I'm still pushing on the most people. Next question is favorite book cover. For that, I'm gonna go with Autobiography by Christina Lauren. Not only do I really love this cover because I love these colors on it. I love the purple, pink, and orange sunset colors, and I love the fact that it's a giant ass motherfucking book and it's 2 little male figures holding hands on the top of it. I also really love this title and how clever it is and what it means for the story. Everything about this cover and this title is like 100% perfection. Next question is a favorite adaptation read this year and watched the movie this year is The Silence of the Lambs by Thomas Harris. I know it's like, what the fuck, why have you never read or watched The Silence of the Lambs? It's like a classic book and a classic movie. Loved the movie adaptation. I thought it represented the book so well. It was like one of the best book to movie adaptations I've ever seen. Next question is, what book made you cry the most? And for that, I'm gonna go with The Gravity of Us by Brittany C. Cherry. I should have expected it because it's Brittany C. Cherry, and some of her other books have made me cry like a bitch before, but I picked this up on a whim during the booktubeathon this year, and I was not expecting to cry as much as I did that day. Holy shit. Next question is, what book made you laugh the most? This question was kind of hard because I don't read a lot of like books that are funny necessarily. Like, I think there are some funny moments in books for sure, but I think the most darkly funny and entertaining book I read this year that kind of made me laugh sometimes was Bad Mommy by Taryn Fisher. This is a thriller. It is not intended to be like funny, I think, but it is kind of like darkly funny, like following Fig's voice. Her voice does remind me a lot of Joe Goldberg from the book You by Caroline Kepnes, so I think if you found You by Caroline Kepnes darkly funny, then you'll also find this book darkly funny. Next question is a new favorite author that you discovered this year. I kind of have 3 different authors that I discovered and fell in love with this year, and that's Taryn Fisher. I read 3 of her books this year, and I'm just like, I loved all of them. And then Emma Scott, I read 2 of her books, and I really enjoyed both of them. They became 2 of my new favorites. And Cambria Hebert. I read 2 of Cambria Hebert's books, and I also really enjoyed them. Next question is guilty pleasure read of the year. And for that, I'm gonna go with The Love Interest, because I know everybody else like hates this book, and I don't like love it necessarily, but I really enjoyed myself and I had fun while I read this book, so I think that's why it's a guilty pleasure, because this book has like really shit reviews on Goodreads and everywhere else. Like, everybody shits all over this book. Next question is favorite book you reread this year. I'm gonna go with Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. I read this book for the first time in 2014, and then I finally picked it up this year for a reread, and I listened to the audiobook this time. I forgot how much I love this book and how much I relate to Kath, and I just fell in love with the story all over again. The next question that I put on there myself, because I read nonfiction too, is what is the best nonfiction book that you read this year? And so for this, I'm gonna go with A Life in Parts by Bryan Cranston. I read this one all the way back in January. I listened to the audiobook for this, and it was just so great. Hearing about Bryan Cranston and all of his crazy life stories. Breaking Bad is my favorite TV show of all time, so getting to hear some like behind the scenes stuff about Breaking Bad was really cool. Bryan Cranston has truly lived an epic life. He has some really cool stories to share. And the last question is, were you happy with your reading year, and what will you do different in 2018? Yes, I was pretty happy with my reading year. I finally read more than 100 books. Finally. I just recently made an entire 2018 TBR and goals video, so I'll link that in the description if you want to see more of like what I'm planning on doing next year. But just to kind of like sum it up, I don't know what I want to set my reading goal at next year, because next year is going to be a busier year for me, but I think I'm going to set it at around 75 books next year. I want to try and read books that are a little bit more out of my comfort zone, because if you noticed, I do read mostly contemporary and contemporary romance, and so I want to like branch out a little bit and just explore more and see if I find new favorite things. So that was my 2017 end of the year book reading survey thing. This video last year, I did some like stats in the beginning of that video, but I think I'm gonna save a bunch of stats for like another video altogether, just because I think it'd be pretty fun to try and see all the shit that I read this year. And yeah, thank you guys for watching as always, and I will see you guys next time. Favorite book that was not published